How's it going? Welcome to another episode of Lost Like Mike. I am your host, Mike Gonzalez. A lot to talk about today. First, I want to start off by saying thank you for subscribing. Thank you for listening and for commenting. I just recently saw a comment. I never get to go to different platforms. I focus on kind of getting these up, and then I don't really get a chance to go to the different platforms. I really should. I check more of the comment sections. There was a really good comment. I don't know what the etiquette is with regard to this kind of thing. I don't know if you're supposed to say the person's name or the things that they say. But anyway, I got a really nice compliment on the Apple review, and I really appreciate it. And so, but I do appreciate the comments, like and my emails. So please do that. Send me messages at lostlikemike@gmail.com. No, I'll talk about the things that are on those emails or requested topics and so on. Also, I wanted to comment on the fact that the past couple of weeks has been, all over the place in terms of when I put the podcast out. And I even I went to put last week's episode on YouTube, and apparently there was a glitch or an error, and the episode from 2 weeks ago had not uploaded. It was just this big red, sorry, but we weren't able to upload your episode indication. So I apologize for that. Anybody who goes on YouTube, and I do try to get these episodes up and about, and I really should do better about checking when they post that they are uploaded correctly and so on. So I apologize for that. This week I am getting a chance to sit down on Sunday like I like to do. I'm not sitting up straight. So I don't know if that's going to change anything, but I like sitting down and recording on Sundays, partially because the house is supposed to be peaceful and quiet for a little while. My wife and daughter go and visit the in-laws. Sometimes they don't get a chance to do that, but as a typical rule, this is when I get to sit down and be as honest and forthcoming and as loud as I want to be, which is the whole purpose of this program. Not to be loud as I want to be, but to say what's on my mind without really caring or any expectation that people are listening. The way that this, I think, would work best, would be if I had a producer or somebody that recorded these and edited them, or took clips or did all that kind of stuff that people do, and posted them, because that would lead the illusion that absolutely nobody listens to them. I mean, look, I'm not kidding myself. There's not a multitude of people that are listening to these as it is right now, which, I don't check the numbers, but I do know that it's not monetized, so that means that I'm not hitting those kind of numbers, which kind of gives me a little bit more freedom. I don't really care what I say on these podcasts. I really am, I feel pretty comfortable being as honest as I have been. But this way it could sustain that illusion, even if it was promoted or things like that. I've talked about wanting to grow this organically, or let people hear it when they needed to hear it, or and so on. But I think that's a substitute for fear. That kind of rhetoric is just me standing in my way of having any sort of success at all, or having any sort of reach, because it's kind of an indirect way of protecting myself from exposure of saying these things to a lot of people. I say that because there's been a couple of times where I'll be in certain circles talking to people, and somebody will say, "Oh, I heard you had a podcast. Tell me more about that. Let me know where I could find it." And me thinking, "Ew, I don't know if I want you to hear about me, finding a booger in my mustache." Well, and I that moment of restraint is the antithesis of what I'm trying to achieve with this. I'm wanting to be honest and just share the things that go on in my life in hopes to connect and relate to the experiences of others. And I can't do that in a place of fear. So, I wouldn't mind having somebody that would do that, and I wouldn't have to know that it's out there. There's a different type of person. There's people that have no problem advocating for themselves or like promoting themselves and going on to different platforms, social media platforms, and saying, hey, check out this next week's episode. And me, I'm just kind of like, if you find it, that's God's plan. or you're meant to hear me talk about whatever, is on my mind at that time. And I think that's self-defeating. I'm kind of bummed by that idea that I don't think it's an ego thing. I just think it's coming from a place of fear. So I'm going to try to do better. I don't even say, hey, I got a new episode up on like different social media. It's funny. I was at one of our shows, and this lady came up, and she's like, a young lady, and she's like, oh, I work with promoting people's social media presence. Where can I find your stuff? And I was so embarrassed. I was like, well, Facebook, I guess. I mean, I have an Instagram that I posted a picture of flowers one time in a skyline, but and I was talking to my cousin, and he was saying, that there's a whole bunch of things that people do with these social media. I never was into it, man. It's not like I was like, well, there's Trendle Pass or whatever. I wasn't like that. It was just, I never really, it wasn't my bag. I wanted to, I don't know. I felt it was not, it had no human element. It was very, in my mind anyway, when it was first coming out, I felt it was very detached. And oftentimes people talk about the creation of these like barriers between people where they communicate anonymously or through avatars and have lost the ability to share face to face or whatever. But I think that as these technologies persist and become more a part of our everyday culture, we evolve and find ways to use these mediums to reach out to each other and maybe especially post COVID in a time and place where we haven't forced to find ways to do it in a more real way, because sometimes that was our only alternative. And it's no substitute for person-to-person contact, in-person contact, but I'm just saying it's not something that should be thrown out or tossed aside out of hand. Okay, is that the expression? Hold on. I'm like the baby with the bathwater. Maybe that's the expression. I don't know. Yeah, but I'm going to pop a can. I'm sorry. That's rude if you're just listening to the audio. That's what that was. If you're watching, then I'm going to have to take a sip. But you can hear it like... it's like a commercial. Anyway, so I woke up this morning. I was kind of like in a half sleep state, and it's like when you mishear song lyrics and you as a writer you find a new idea in it. And I think it's interesting because Well, anyway, the phrase I heard in my dream, sort of half awake dream state, was ambition as a virtue. And I started repeating it, and I think that's what inevitably woke me up, because it took me out of my sleep. And incidentally, I won't get into this too much. It is something that's on my mind, but I'm obsessed. I find that my character is obsessed, who I am as a person, and I don't know if it's a healthy amount or if everybody is, but I find myself to be obsessed with mortality. It's the first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning. It's the last thing I think about when I go to bed. It pops in my head intermittently without permission throughout the day. And it's really a maddening idea. Sometimes I'll be, doing whatever activity, I guess, maybe, for example, I don't know, we'll say playing a video game or playing music on stage, and I'll think of the finite amount of time that we have on this earth, or I'll think randomly, or I'll think of the fragility of our relationships and the quickness of how time passes, and holding on to like children before they become adults. I don't know. And then the morning I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, thank you for another day. And then I'll be thinking of all these morbid thoughts. It's a drag. And I don't know if everybody does that. I don't know how natural it is, or whether or not that's a scary thing or a good thing. Sometimes I'm filled with anxiety. Lately, I've been hearing this quote in my mind about, no matter how anxious you are, it doesn't change the inevitable or the outcome of any particular event. So, believe it or not, it's kind of stifled some of that anxiety. Anyway, so that's been on my mind, as it always is. But when I was waking up this morning, after I was like, hey, I'm going to die one day, I said ambition as a virtue. And I thought, what is, like, first of all, and like, does that mean anything? Is it was just random words smashed together? But when I think of ambition, I think of the negative portrayal in the world of being overly ambitious, and ambition taking the front seat and the priority over relationships and family and all that kind of thing, and the negative connotation that comes along with ambition. And then I thought, well, what does that mean then? What would it be as a virtue? And I thought, well, you can aspire to be a better human. You could aspire to be, you can want to be a better husband, or a better father, or and that could be your ambition, and wanting to be better in and of itself is really what I think that phrase would mean if it was a phrase, ambition as a virtue. The pursuit of wanting to be better as an ambition, right? Anyway, just food for thought, putting it out there as an idea. Sometimes an abstract sentence like that, where that just sort of pops in the head, sometimes might be tapping into a larger consciousness that maybe I don't understand it right now, but it was meant to be put out there in the collective, and y'all can figure it out. And one day, I remember one time I had wrote a song called The Genesis Complex, and it was the idea that we all sort of find things easier to deconstruct, to destroy, and it's easier to build from nothing. Like, you know what? I need a clean slate. I need a blank page to create. Instead of making this relationship better, or taking this, this damaged relationship and trying to grow from there. I just need to wash my hands of you, and I'll do better the next time. That was kind of the idea. That was the idea of the song. And then one day I was talking to somebody, and I said, it's kind of like Genesis complex, the idea. And then the person said, oh yeah, I've heard of that. And then started telling me about this idea. Now, most likely in that scenario, that was not the case, that they had heard about it somewhere out there in some sort of conversation and were regurgitating back to me my own theory or my own idea. Most likely they were just trying to be relating with me, and they were just saying, oh yeah, I heard about that, in that sort of way that we are kind to each other and say, yeah, I read that book and now I'm familiar with his work. Yes. And you've never read it in your life, and you're just wanting to be courteous. That's probably more like it. But just in the idea of somebody telling you back your own thing, I thought that was the closest that I can give you of that concept. But maybe one day somebody will say, ambition can be a virtue. And I'll say, really? Tell me more. And then I'll be like, oh, that totally makes sense. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Anyway. So in this week's ongoing pursuit of being humbled, it's my daughter yet again that wins the title of keeping me humble. Last week it was, hey Dad, you look funny when you jump up and down when you perform, which was great. Made me feel good about myself. This week, two things really. Well, she came up and she put her hand, on my chest, on the sides, and she started shaking it. And she says, your boob doesn't bounce around as much as Mom's does. I mean, it bounces around, but just not as much as Mom does. And then she did it for 3 or 4 times, where she would just, manhandle my man boob. And then she was like, you should really try Mom. Hers are really. I said, no, I'm good. Okay, thank you, sweetheart. That's appreciated. Thank you. Then later that same day, she went and got this super soaker. It's this big, kind of water stick that it's kind of like a syringe, but like a giant one. And you pull water into this big tube, and then you squirt, comes out with high pressure, water. And she says, it was empty. And then she was going to the kitchen to load it up after saying she was going to get me. And I was thinking, please don't, right? And then I said, no, you really can't do that in the house. And then a little while later, my wife says, hey, could you go check the mail? And I knew, but at that time, you're either you're a bad father if you don't allow what happens next to happen. So I said, oh, okay, it's, I already got the mail. No, can you please go check the mail? But I brought it in when I got home. Okay, you know what? I'll go. And then they proceeded to super soak me. And wait, now, you know what? That might have been the wet t-shirt, which caused the hands on the boob. Never mind. You know what? We're not going to go there. But yeah, so I walked outside, got about halfway, and then they said, hey, turn around, and then, shot me with the water super soaker. So that wasn't the humbling experience, but it was just, I try to put that out there so that my daughter thought it was the greatest. Because see, that's the whole thing. My wife, I get it, right? She's being funny. She's trying to show my daughter, you know, she knows that I know I'm about to get soaked. However, my daughter doesn't. So in my daughter's mind, haha, I just tricked dad to walk outside so I could super soak him. I tricked him into thinking he needed to go check them out. That's what really kind of is the dig, right? Because she's like, haha. So anyway, soaked my dad. We did. So my wife had to go to the dentist. It was her turn. And I'm not saying it's rare in foreign, in, you know, the times in between when it's just me and my daughter getting to hang out and play and whatever, we do get to. But I knew that this was coming, so I didn't want the day to suck. And so I planned a treasure hunt. As well, you know, she's going to go to the dentist. So I got this lockbox. It's like for money. I bought it at Goodwill a while back. It's just a box that has a key, right? And I said, all right, we tried like a style of this before, but basically I came up with these clues and I posted them around the house, and one would lead to the next and to the next until she found the treasure, right? So in this case, I set up this box and I put Post-it notes on it, and I said, you know, and I put like money and like candies and like some toys that she had not received, and some like the fireworks that you throw at the ground, they pop, and, you know, stuff like that. Just an assorted bunch of random things that she hadn't seen. And so I locked the box, and I decided it would be easier to hide the key. And so anyway, and the clues were like, they were fun. Like, she has this table when she was like little, like 5 or 6, and it has Dora the Explorer on it, and with like Boots the monkey, like as the artwork on the table. So like the first clue was, you need to find the table and see Dora, and she has the first clue, the next clue. But it was fun to see her try to work it out in her mind, like what Dora, what table? I know there's this table, and she was, you know, going through this, like vocalizing these things out loud. And when it dawns on her that, oh, there's Dora on the, okay, where's my pink table with Dora on it? And then she scrambles and tries to find it. And then I had the next Post-it stuck to the table, hidden behind the chair. And so one of the clues was, we have this trash can where you have to step on it, and then it opens the lid, and there was a Post-it on the underside of the lid. But it was fun. She went through the different clues, and some of them, when she did the clue, it would be like, before you can go on to the next clue, you have to like jump up and down 3 times. Or the last one was to do like to jump a certain number of times and then do a silly dance, and then you'll find the key. And then I had it in my pocket. I just handed it to her and said, okay, cool thing, you did it. And I thought I would write on that for like at least the day, you know what I mean? Like the good job being a dad today, right? But then she started getting upset about something else, and you know, I was trying to discipline her, or like let her know it's okay, but then she was throwing a tantrum, and one thing led to another, and she was upset with me, just like that. All that good dad street cred went out the window. I mean, it really didn't, but it's tough, you know? I mean, it's funny because in church today, they talked about anger, and man, I could have heard that yesterday. You know what I mean? It's not that I got angry. I did get angry, but only because she was throwing a tantrum and she hurt herself. And I was trying to explain this to my wife. When I was young, a couple instances, I remember seeing my dad. He got really angry about something. It was unrelated. I mean, what he was angry about is irrelevant, really, but he just turned and put his hand through the wall. But he ran into a board, a 2x4 or whatever, and broke his hand. And I remember thinking, well, that's not a good idea. Like, to get angry and do something. I mean, there's been other instances, obviously. People do this kind of thing all the time. I've made girls angry that I was going out with, and they, you know, cut up my band shirts or throw things or whatever the case is. I've never been a fan of that. Like expressing your anger in sort of like these bursts of just tantrum. And it's sort of, it's one of the, I always say how my pastor is like, just is the direct conduit for God to me, like just tells me exactly what I need to hear more often than not when I need to hear it. But anyway, she had tantrumed or whatever, and she hit her head. And then that's when I exploded or got angry, because it's kind of like my philosophy on why I don't like getting on roller coasters or why I don't like watching sad movies. Like, the world is filled with things that cause me to be scared or anxious or sad. I don't need to voluntarily go out and encourage these things to happen. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's naive or silly, but, and the second thing would be any irreparable damage that was caused in these sorts of events. Like, I know what it's like to work with a broken hand, you know. But God forbid she hurt herself while trying to express this anger and permanently damage some aspect of her body. I mean, all because what you're angry about an app on your tablet or something. You know what I mean? It's just the absurdity. But like the pastor was talking about today, it's more about, like, you're never going to de-escalate something by adding to it, by adding some sort of, you know, second part to it. Like, there's nothing, if I get angry and she's angry, especially, I mean, she's only 8, she's not going to be like, oh, cool, I guess I should relax and just, you know, slow it down, you know. She's just going to be further upset by the whole situation. So the idea is to take a minute to listen, not to be quick to respond. Listen, understand, and then respond. Don't be immediate in my reaction. And it's funny because he kept saying stimuli in a funny way. Stimuli. I can't say it even like he was saying it, but he was trying to say, like, here's the stimuli, here's the response. What you can't just have the stimuli and then have the And he kept saying it, and all I kept thinking is, that's not how you say stimuli. And anyway, but he kept saying, but really listen. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not gonna, And even during the sermon, there was a baby crying. And in my mind, I'm like, would somebody shut, you know what I mean? And I was like, dude, you're experiencing frustration, and it's to illustrate the point of how on edge you are at all times, you know what I mean? Like, and this guy's telling you, just take a beat. If something's frustrating you or something's, hurting you, whatever it is, take a beat, know what you're dealing with, whatever. I just felt like it was one big illustration of the point, one thing after another. Anyway, but much to learn, I'm telling you. But good tools in terms of, like, I'm going to try to be better. I was just talking to my son about his anger, and that's why today's sermon was so on point, because it was just literally last night that we're dealing with this situation between him and his mother, and the escalation of this toxic relationship, and me thinking today, like, really, dude, like, how do these people know that it's just the theme of the week, man? It's craziness. I stayed home from work on a day. We talked about that when I did the last podcast. And if you remember, we talked about on that podcast, well, you may not. If this is your first podcast, welcome. But anyway, I talked about staying home from work because I was sick, which I do sound a lot better, don't I? I'm not 100%, but I'm better adjacent, so that's good enough for me. But during the podcast, we heard people doing the yard. They were mowing the yard, right? The other yards in the neighborhood. And how I said I was thinking about doing the yard, and how I thought, how ridiculous is that? Like, I'm here to rest. I'm supposed to be chilling out. And here I am talking about filling. And that was my big problem. You get downtime, and the next thing you know, you want to cram it full of what we can do next. And it's not healthy. Okay. Well, after I finished processing and editing and doing all that with the podcast, I rested for a little bit, and then I decided to do the yard anyway. To my credit, I only did the backyard, but let me explain why. So, a couple things. I started in the backyard. My wife had done the yard last in the backyard. And we both operate differently, okay? So she wanted to beat the rain when she did the yard the time before. So she says, hey, you know what? No, I got this. I'm going to go do the yard, right? And then she comes back, a little while later, 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later. And she goes, it's good enough. I just wanted to get some done before the rain came. I respect that. But I'm too OCD for that. Like, when I do something, I need it to be done. I need to be edged, and I need everything to be done correctly, or it's going to bug me until I get to do it right? Until I correct it, or till the project gets done right. So I started on the back because it had been on my mind that I wanted to redo what she had done and then edge it all and get it all, looking sharp. So I was out there working, and then I also realized that the back alley we have on our property, there's like, it's this privacy fence, and it lets out into this alley that's behind our house. And I always call it like our turn or not our turn, because we have neighbors behind us that are on the other side of the alley, and sometimes they'll mow that section. Because if not, I mean, with the rain we've been having, it's just overgrowth, and next thing you know, you have all kind of like jungle creatures. I don't know, I'm just kidding. But like, there's we do have rabbits and raccoons and different possums and things that kind of snakes. So I try to do it. If I notice that it's getting up there and they haven't done it, I'll say, well, it's our turn. I know it's our turn. So I'll do the alley. Okay. So part of my job, there's a section of our yard where the cable company had, our cable company came out and they buried our line, right? Our line to our cable. But when I was trying to uproot this tree, we had cut down this fig tree, my son and I. And there was a stump. And so I started to dig up the stump. And they never could prove that I did this, but I suspect that I might have either the roots growing or me cutting, because I was over here, but somehow, anyway, long story short, I cut our cable line. They had to come out and rebury it. And they reburied the section that they did, I mean, right below the surface, man. And then there was one section where they didn't even bother. They just left it above ground. And they said I had to do it. Or at least that's what my wife said, that they said. So whatever. But, so there was a section of our grass that's kind of we've been leaving alone because I didn't want to cut the line with the mower or the weed whacker, right? So it's just exposed wire, this cable. All right, so I was like, I'm gonna bury that I'm gonna bury that wire, and then I'm gonna make it look nice. And already with the rain from that stump, were all of these branches growing up from the fig tree. Now I don't want to show you pictures of like when I cut down the first time I started trimming the fig tree, the sap got on my arms and it caused an allergic reaction where it just burned through my flesh. Okay, like I'll show you here. If you're watching on the video, I got these, and just because I was carrying the branches that I cut off of the stump to the front yard, the one rubbed against the bare part of my skin. I mean, like, that's why I had hired out my son to cut it down with me. And I dressed up like a stormtrooper so that I could cut down the tree the last time. And that's why I really want to dig it up, because it's a hardcore survivor and it just keeps coming back. Anyway, but I cut those branches down and made the backyard look sharp. All right, so then I go back to the alley and I start to work on the alley, and well, two things happened. In the front yard, when I was messing with the one wire, I found that there was this one orange cable sticking up out of the ground. And that's nothing that's live for us. It's something that was left by the cable company, or So I start pulling up the line, and it goes all the way through the yard, and goes around to the back of my house. And then I had to cut it from underneath, and then I wrap it up in a thing and I throw it away. So then when I go to the alley, I see a couple of these orange cords in and around this large tube of a cable box, or like an electric box, a cable box. Okay. So I'm like, I can't even edge, I can't mow with all these wires everywhere. So I wrapped up a couple of these wires and I set them on top of this tube, the cable box tube, and I just set them on top. And then I'm going and I'm mowing and edging. But somehow, when I was edging and I came around to there was an electric section and then this cable box, the weed whacker hits the cable box, this tube, metal box, and the box, the shell falls apart, right? And I'm not even paying attention. I had just set the cords on top, and so I dropped the weed whacker, and I reach my arm down and I lift up the shell to make this cable box whole again. And as I'm doing it, I just feel a surge of heat come over my arm like fire. And I think, oh my God, was that like an electrical surge? Am I on fire? Did I touch a hot box? What's happening to me? And something just surged like this. And my eyes go fuzzy and they get focused. And I just see a swarm of yellow jackets that were, I guess, living inside this cable box. This dormant cable box. And were stinging my arm. And I'm telling you, fire. Like legit, like little, baby dragons, pooping fire into my armhole. It just was very painful. I mean, I got a couple of them, they tagged me. I don't know if you're just listening, you got to take my faith, take it on my description. But anyway, so I left the weed whacker in the alley and I go back into the yard, like thinking, well, surely they won't follow me into my house. And I go to the back door and I knock on the back door, and my wife comes out. And I said, honey, I tell her the story. And then I'm like, and yellow jackets stung my arm. And then her first words were, you see, when I told you that I got stung by a yellow jacket, I stepped on a yellow jacket and I was crying. And you said, suck it up, which I never said, by the way. When you said suck it up and don't cry in front of the baby. And now you know what it feels like. And then I said, wait a minute. It took me a second to even register. I kind of cocked my head sideways. And then she smiled and then closed the door. And then, hey, I said, wait a minute, I want to shake your hand. And she said, because that literally took you like 5 seconds to make this about you. I said, my arm hasn't even stopped hurting yet. And you've already made it about something that happened with you. And I told her, I said I was for sure going to tell everybody on the podcast. And I said, you're welcome to come on and defend yourself. But anyway, the story went that my wife had stepped on a yellow jacket, stepped on a bee, and that it was incredibly painful because with the last dying thing that the insect could do was to sting her and fill her up with that fire juice into her foot. But that she came into the house, she alleges that I locked her outside. I said, stay out here. But that's not what happened. She came into the house like just flailing, like, oh, this is so painful. Ah! And my daughter was really little. Like, little. And all I said was, hey, kind of traumatic. Like, go be traumatic away from the child. Like, I mean, I come from where like, I picture like Yosemite Sam running up the hill and getting to the top of record, and then running back down and being like, hey, everything's cool. We're all good. Like, that's what I picture we're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Because this 4-year-old, 3-year-old, whatever, even 5-year-old, has no way to interpret what's going on. So they see somebody that's like somebody who's like a pillar of strength, or like they're somebody they're supposed to be like dependent on, and they're freaking out. So if it was me, I'd be freaking out. And then, right? So I think my only point was, I'm not saying don't feel what you're feeling. You have a right to feel what you're feeling. I'm just saying, like, run up on the hill and then, or like hop if it's hurting your foot. Just, do it. And she says I told her to do it outside and then come in later. But I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I mean, and her point was that it's natural to cry. It's natural to be upset. And it's okay for the child to see you in those states of being. And I'm like, yeah, but if the child has no context, if they don't understand what's happening, then it could be traumatic. So, I mean, there's an argument to be made to be a little stoic. I mean, I'm not saying to bite your lip and take that pain, you know what I mean? But it's like, boom, you stump your toe, excuse me for a second, and then run up the hill. Like, I don't know why that you think they just made that up in the cartoon. No, it comes from like real life experience. Okay, it's like life imitating art, imitating life. Anyway, I shook her hand and said that was impressive that you were able to make it about you. I mean, my arm was boom, and she was like, see, it does hurt, right, stupid? And then, but no, she didn't laugh too long at me. It was a stifled laugh. Anyway, I had to go back out there and get that weed whacker in the alley. And I swear the Yellow Jacket came out and was like, oh, you back for more? You want some more of this? And I like ran back inside. It was very terrifying. You ever see those people that do like those giant wasps, you know what I mean? They get stung just to show you they could take the pain. It's like, I couldn't even imagine. Because I'm like talking about a Yellow Jacket like it's the most painful thing in the world. It was pretty painful though. But anyway, that's all I have for you this week. I don't think I can think of anything else to talk about. But please send me topics, ideas, things that are on your mind, lostlikemike@gmail.com. And thank you for listening and hanging out. Thank you for the kind comments. Appreciate that as well.